January 19th, 2026, 0647 local time. Eastern approach to the Strait of Hormuz. The radar operator aboard USS Gravely stares at his screen and says two words that change everything. Multiple contacts. Not 2, not 5, not 10, 47. 47 fast attack craft launched simultaneously from 3 Iranian ports, converging on a single American destroyer in a crescent formation designed to do one thing: overwhelm every defensive system on the ship before the crew can respond. The captain has 11 minutes. 11 minutes to classify 47 targets. 11 minutes to separate missile boats from decoys from suicide craft. 11 minutes to decide who dies. And there are 200 civilian fishing vessels directly in the line of fire. This is not a drill. This is not a simulation. This is the swarm doctrine Iran spent 20 years perfecting, executed for the first time against an active United States warship in a shooting war. I'm your host at Navy Battlefront, where we break down the most critical naval operations shaping global power. Today, we're reconstructing the most complex surface engagement the U.S. Navy has fought since World War II. Minute by minute, decision by decision, shot by shot. To understand what happened on January 19th, you need to understand what USS Gravely was doing there in the first place. December 2025. Tensions between the United States and Iran had reached levels not seen since the tanker wars of the 1980s. After months of escalating confrontations, drone intercepts, tanker seizures, and proxy strikes across the region, U.S. Central Command ordered a reinforced naval presence in the Persian Gulf. USS Gravely, an Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer displacing 9,700 tons, was assigned to Task Force 55, operating out of Bahrain. Her mission: escort commercial tanker convoys through the Strait of Hormuz, the 21-mile-wide choke point through which 21% of the world's daily oil supply passes. Gravely was not alone. She was part of a rotating escort package. But on the morning of January 19th, the rotation schedule placed her as the sole warship covering a 4-ship tanker convoy transiting the eastern approach. The nearest backup, the cruiser USS Leyte Gulf, was 112 nautical miles to the southwest, escorting a separate convoy. Air cover from the carrier USS Harry S. Truman was 45 minutes away, at best. Gravely was, for all practical purposes, on her own. Commander Patricia Holt had taken command of Gravely 7 months earlier. She had 16 years of surface warfare experience. She had completed the Navy's advanced tactical training at the Surface Warfare Officers School in Newport. She had studied Iranian naval doctrine extensively. She knew what a swarm attack looked like on paper. She was about to learn what one looked like in reality. The morning started routinely. Gravely was steaming at 14 knots on a heading of 045, maintaining station 1 nautical mile ahead of the lead tanker, the Marshall Islands flagged MT Pacific Fortuna. The convoy was making 12 knots through the traffic separation scheme, following the established shipping lane eastward. Sea state was moderate, 3 to 4 foot swells from the southeast. Visibility was 12 nautical miles. Wind was light, 8 knots from the south. Standard conditions for the strait. The Combat Information Center was operating at Condition 3, wartime cruising. 1/3 of the combat stations manned. Weapons systems on standby. The SPY-1D radar was sweeping continuously, tracking the usual clutter of commercial traffic, fishing boats, and dhows that crowd the strait at any given hour. At 0614, Intelligence Specialist 2nd Class Marcus Webb flagged an unusual pattern in the signal's intelligence feed. Iranian naval communications from Bandar Abbas, Jask, and the island naval facility at Abu Musa had gone quiet approximately 40 minutes earlier. Emissions silence. All 3 ports simultaneously. Webb logged the anomaly and forwarded it to the watch officer, Lieutenant Junior Grade David Nolan. Nolan reviewed it and assessed it as a possible communications exercise. Iranian forces periodically conducted emissions control drills. It was unusual for 3 facilities to go silent simultaneously, but not unprecedented. This was the first missed signal. The second came at 0631. A Navy P-8 Poseidon maritime patrol aircraft operating from Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar had completed its sweep of the northern Gulf 4 hours earlier. Its track did not extend to the eastern strait. The aircraft had been retasked to monitor a suspected submarine contact near the Farsi Island area. The gap in aerial surveillance over the eastern approach had existed for nearly 6 hours. No one aboard Gravely was aware of this gap. The patrol schedule was managed by the Maritime Operations Center in Bahrain, and the retasking order had not been communicated to escort vessels in the eastern sector. 2 gaps, 2 missed signals, and the clock was running. At 0641, Operations Specialist First Class Jenna Torres noticed something on the SPY-1D display. Surface contacts were emerging from behind Abu Musa Island. Small, fast, intermittent returns. At first she counted 6, then 9. Then the number kept climbing. Simultaneously, radar returns began appearing from the direction of Jask to the northeast and from the coastal waters near Bandar-e-Kong to the north. Torres keyed her headset. Tau, OS-1 Torres, I'm seeing multiple small surface contacts emerging from 3 separate bearings. Count is still climbing. Recommend we go to General Quarters. Lieutenant Commander James Park, the tactical action officer, stepped to her console. He watched the screen for 12 seconds. 12 seconds that felt like an hour. The contacts were multiplying. They were fast, making 35 to 40 knots. And they were converging. Park picked up the 1MC. General Quarters. General Quarters. All hands man your battle stations. The time was 0643. The alarm sent 320 sailors sprinting through passageways, sealing hatches, donning flash gear. Gravely's crew had drilled this hundreds of times. Average time to full readiness, 4 minutes, 30 seconds. They did it in 3 minutes, 51 seconds. That 39 seconds would matter. Commander Holt arrived in CIC at 0644. The picture on the tactical display was unlike anything she had seen outside a simulator. Contact symbols were proliferating across the screen like a virus. Each one represented a small, fast vessel heading toward her ship. Give me a count, she ordered. Torres worked the tracker. Ma'am, I hold 43 surface contacts inbound from 3 sectors. Northern Group bearing 340, 17 contacts, range 22 nautical miles. Eastern Group bearing 075, 14 contacts, range 19 nautical miles. Southern Group bearing 160, 12 contacts, range 24 nautical miles. By 0647, the count had risen to 47. Holt faced the fundamental problem of swarm defense. The Arleigh Burke-class destroyer is one of the most capable warships ever built. Spy-1D phased array radar, Aegis combat system, 96 vertical launch cells, a 5-inch Mark 45 gun, 2 Mark 38 25mm chain guns, 2 Phalanx CIWS close-in weapons systems, electronic warfare suites, countermeasure launchers. Against a conventional threat, an anti-ship cruise missile, a hostile aircraft, a submarine, these systems are devastating. Against 47 small boats approaching simultaneously from 3 directions at 40 knots, the math changes. The 5-inch gun can engage 1 target at a time. Rate of fire, 20 rounds per minute. Time to shift between targets, 6 to 8 seconds. At 40 knots, a speedboat covers nearly half a nautical mile in that time. The 2 Mark 38 chain guns, 1 port, 1 starboard, can engage targets on their respective sides. Effective range, roughly 2 nautical miles. Rate of fire, 180 rounds per minute. But each gun has a limited arc and cannot cover the opposite side of the ship. The Phalanx CIWS systems are designed for missile defense, not surface engagement. They can be employed against small boats, but their engagement range is short, roughly 1 nautical mile, and they are optimized for incoming missiles traveling at high speed, not zigzagging speedboats. The Aegis system can track all 47 contacts simultaneously. It can provide fire control solutions for every single one, but the weapons can only engage a fraction of them at any given moment. This is the core of swarm doctrine. It does not matter how sophisticated the defender's systems are. What matters is the ratio of inbound threats to available engagement channels. If the attacker can saturate those channels, some threats will always get through. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy had understood this principle since the 1990s. They built their entire maritime strategy around it. Commander Holt activated the encrypted satellite link to 5th Fleet Headquarters in Bahrain. Lighthouse, this is Gravely Actual. I hold 47 fast movers inbound from 3 bearings. Request immediate air support and declare hostile intent. The response from 5th Fleet came 38 seconds later. Gravely Lighthouse, copy 47 inbound. We are launching alert aircraft. Estimated time on station, 38 minutes. You are weapons free for self-defense under existing ROE. Acknowledge. 38 minutes. Gravely would be fighting alone for 38 minutes. Holt turned to her weapons officer. Spin up everything. 5-inch, chain guns, CIWS to auto. Load chaff and flare decoys in all SRBOC launchers. I want the Nulka decoys ready for immediate deployment. Then she addressed the problem no simulator had adequately modeled. The fishing fleet. The eastern Strait of Hormuz is one of the most congested waterways on Earth. On any given morning, hundreds of small fishing vessels, Iranian, Omani, Pakistani, Indian, operate in the same waters where warships transit. Their radar returns are nearly identical to those of small military craft. They operate at similar speeds when running to their fishing grounds. Many are wooden-hulled, which reduces their radar signature. At 0647, Gravely's radar was tracking not just 47 hostile contacts, but over 200 additional small surface contacts. The morning fishing fleet spread across the engagement zone. Rules of engagement required positive identification before engagement. A speedboat had to demonstrate hostile intent, aiming weapons, maintaining an attack profile, or firing before Gravely could legally shoot. At 40 knots closing speed, the time between positive identification and weapons impact could be measured in seconds. Holt ordered the electronic warfare team to activate the ship's full-spectrum jamming suite, targeting the known communications frequencies used by IRGC naval forces. If she could disrupt their coordination, the swarm might lose cohesion. The EA-18G jamming took effect within 90 seconds. Intercepts confirmed that at least some IRGC craft lost communications with their shore-based command. But the swarm did not slow down. The boats had been briefed on their attack vectors before launch. They did not need real-time commands to execute the approach. This was the doctrine working as designed. Decentralized execution. Each boat captain knew his sector, his target bearing, his attack profile. Communications were a bonus, not a necessity. At 0651, the northern group crossed inside 20 nautical miles. Electro-optical sensors on Gravely's mast began resolving individual craft. Intelligence Specialist Webb pulled reference imagery from the ship's tactical library. TAO, I'm identifying PACAP-class fast attack craft in the northern group. At least 4 confirmed. PACAP carries 2 Nasr-1 anti-ship missiles, range approximately 20 nautical miles. Additionally identifying Zulfigar-type assault boats. Those carry RPGs, heavy machine guns, and possibly mines. PACAP-class. That changed the calculation entirely. The Nasr-1 is a short-range anti-ship cruise missile derived from the Chinese C-704. It weighs 350 kilograms, carries a 130-kilogram warhead and travels at high subsonic speed, roughly Mach 0.8. It uses active radar homing in its terminal phase. Against a destroyer-sized target, it is lethal. If 4 PACAP boats each carried 2 Nasr-1 missiles, that was 8 anti-ship missiles that could be launched from within range at any moment. Add the possibility that boats in the other 2 groups also carried missiles, and the threat count multiplied. Holt made a decision. Weapons free on any contact positively identified as PACAP class, or any contact that demonstrates hostile intent. 5-inch gun. Engage the northern group. Prioritize missile carriers. At 06:53, Gravely's Mark 45 5-inch gun fired for the first time. The round, a GPS-guided Mark 171 extended-range projectile, traveled 18 nautical miles in 31 seconds and detonated 15 meters from the lead PACOP in the northern group. Close, but not a kill. The boat swerved violently and continued inbound. The gun crew adjusted. Second round. This one struck the water 3 meters from the same boat, and fragmentation ripped through the fiberglass hull. The PACOP slowed, turned broadside, and began taking on water. Its crew was visible scrambling on deck. First kill. 46 remaining. But the 5-inch gun could only engage 1 target at a time, and the swarm was closing from 3 directions simultaneously. The northern group was now inside 16 nautical miles. The eastern group had closed to 14. The southern group was at 18, but accelerating. At 06:55, the eastern group began a maneuver that Gravely's crew would later describe as the most dangerous moment of the engagement. 14 boats split into 3 subgroups. 4 peeled left, 4 peeled right, and 6 drove straight at the destroyer's beam. A trident formation, designed to force the defender to split fire in 3 directions simultaneously. Meanwhile, the tanker convoy was still behind Gravely, making 12 knots on its original course. Commander Holt had ordered the convoy to increase speed and turn south, away from the engagement, but commercial tankers do not turn quickly. The Pacific Fortuna was still within 8 nautical miles of Gravely. If a missile overshot the destroyer, the tanker was directly in its path. 06:57. The fishing fleet was now a critical factor. Dozens of civilian vessels, panicked by the sound of gunfire and the sight of military speedboats racing past them, began scattering in all directions. Some headed toward Gravely, some headed toward the IRGC boats, some simply stopped in the water, their crews frozen. Gravely's radar picture became a chaos of returns. Hostile, civilian, and unknown contacts were now intermixed across every bearing. The fire control system could track them all, but the rules of engagement demanded human judgment for each engagement decision. Was that contact at bearing 085 a PACOP or a fishing dhow? Was that cluster at bearing 170 a group of Zulfiqar assault boats, or a family of Pakistani fishermen heading to port? The burden fell on the operators in CIC. Each one was staring at a screen, cross-referencing radar returns with electro-optical imagery, trying to make positive identification on targets moving at 40 knots through a cluttered sea. At 06:58, the first missile launched. A PACAP in the eastern group, now at 9 nautical miles, fired a single Nasr-1 anti-ship missile. The infrared sensors on Gravely detected the launch plume instantly. The Aegis system classified it as an inbound cruise missile within 1.4 seconds. Vampire, Vampire, Vampire. Inbound missile, bearing 082, range 8.7 miles, speed 600 knots, altitude 20 feet. The Phalanx CIWS on the starboard side activated autonomously. This was what it was designed for. Last-ditch defense against inbound missiles. The Block 1B system tracked the Nasr-1 as it skimmed the wave tops at Mach 0.8, and at a range of approximately 1,500 meters, The 20mm Gatling gun opened fire. Rate: 4,500 rounds per minute. The Nasr-1 disintegrated 1,100 meters from Gravely's hull. Fragments splashed into the sea. The engagement lasted 2.3 seconds, but Phalanx had expended 127 rounds on that single intercept. The drum carries 1,550 rounds, 11 more intercepts at that expenditure rate, and the starboard CIWS would be empty. Commander Holt keyed the tactical net. All stations, weapons posture shift. 5-inch gun retarget to missile carriers only. Chain guns, engage all hostiles inside 5 nautical miles. CIWS remains auto for inbound missiles. Electronic warfare, I need continuous jamming on missile seeker frequencies. At 0659, a second Nasr-1 launched from the southern group. This one came in lower, barely 10 feet above the surface. Phalanx acquired it late, at 900 meters. The engagement was marginal. The missile was struck, but its momentum carried the wreckage to within 400 meters of the ship before it tumbled into the sea. 400 meters. Close enough to spray the hull with fragments. No damage to critical systems, but 2 sailors on the weather decks suffered minor shrapnel injuries. Gravely had drawn first blood, on both sides. Between 0700 and 0706, the engagement entered its most intense phase. The northern group, reduced to 14 boats after the 5-inch gun kills, reached the 8 nautical mile line and began their final attack run. They were no longer in formation. They had dispersed into a loose swarm, each boat weaving independently, making them nearly impossible targets for the single 5-inch gun. The eastern group's Trident formation closed to 5 nautical miles. The Port Mark 38 chain gun began engaging. At 2 nautical miles, the 25mm rounds were devastating against fiberglass-hulled speedboats. One Zulfigar took a direct burst and exploded. Its fuel tanks ruptured, sending a fireball 30 feet into the air. But for every boat the chain gun hit, 3 more were closing. The southern group was now inside 10 nautical miles and splitting into its own sub-formations. Gravely was surrounded on 3 sides. The only open bearing was astern, where the tanker convoy was still struggling to clear the area. At 0702, a third missile launched. This one was different, not a Nasr-1. The radar signature was smaller, faster. Webb identified it as a C-701, a Chinese-origin television-guided anti-ship missile with a range of 15 nautical miles. Lighter warhead, 29 kilograms, but fast and difficult to detect at low altitude. The C-701 came in from the southeast, from a paycap that had positioned itself behind a cluster of fishing boats. The Phalanx port side engaged at 1,200 meters. Kill confirmed. 88 rounds expended. At 7:03, something happened that no one in CIC expected. A 4th missile launched, not from a paycap, but from a Zulfigar-type assault boat that intelligence had classified as carrying only guns and RPGs. The missile was a Nasr-1, jury-rigged onto a launch rail that was not part of the boat's standard configuration. "Where did that come from?" Park shouted. The intelligence assessment had been wrong. At least some of the Zulfigar boats had been modified to carry missiles. The number of missile-capable craft in the swarm was not 8 or 10. It could be 20 or more. This was the error, the wrong classification that changed the entire defensive calculus. Holt's voice cut through the chaos. "Reclassify all contacts as potential missile carriers. 5-inch gun. Engage anything inside 12 miles that is positively military. Do not wait for missile classification." The order was legally and tactically sound under the circumstances, but it carried an enormous risk. In the cluttered environment, with fishing boats and military craft intermixed, the probability of misidentification had just increased dramatically. At 0704, the 5-inch gun engaged a contact at bearing 355, range 11 nautical miles. The round struck and destroyed the target. 30 seconds later, CIC received a report that made Commander Holt's stomach drop. The target had been broadcasting an automatic identification system signal consistent with a fishing vessel. AIS can be spoofed. IRGC boats were known to use false AIS data, but there was no way to confirm in the moment whether the destroyed vessel was military or civilian. The engagement was logged. It would be investigated later. Right now, there were still over 30 hostile craft closing in, and the ship was fighting for survival. If you're watching this, and you want to see how the Navy trains for exactly these impossible scenarios, subscribe to Navy Battlefront. We break down every phase of modern naval combat with the precision it deserves. Between 0704 and 0710, Gravely's weapon systems operated at maximum capacity. The 5-inch gun fired 47 rounds, scoring confirmed hits on 9 IRGC craft. The starboard Mark 38 engaged 14 targets, destroying 4 and damaging 6. The port Mark 38 engaged 11 targets, destroying 3. Both Phalanx systems intercepted a total of 5 missiles, 3 Nasr 1s and 2 C-701s. The ship's Nulka active decoy was launched at 0707 when 2 missiles were detected inbound simultaneously from different bearings. The rocket-propelled decoy hovered off the starboard quarter, broadcasting a radar signature mimicking a large warship. One of the 2 inbound Nasr 1 missiles diverted toward the decoy and struck the water 600 meters away. The second was killed by Phalanx. At 0708, 4 Zulfiqar boats penetrated to within 800 meters of Gravely's port side. At that range, RPGs and heavy machine guns became a threat. The .50 caliber machine guns mounted on the ship's weather decks opened fire, manned by damage control teams who had been cross-trained for close-in defense. 1 Zulfiqar detonated in a massive secondary explosion, far larger than its fuel load should have produced. Post-engagement analysis would later confirm it was rigged as a suicide vessel, packed with approximately 500 kilograms of high explosive. Had it reached Gravely's hull, the detonation would have been catastrophic. The remaining 3 boats were driven off by chain gun fire, one sinking as it retreated. At 0710, the first external support arrived. 2 F/A-18F Super Hornets from VFA 103, the Jolly Rogers, operating off USS Harry S. Truman, entered the engagement zone at 25,000 feet. They had been vectored in at maximum speed. The 38-minute estimate had been cut to 27 minutes by burning through fuel reserves. The Super Hornets descended to 5,000 feet and began engaging IRGC craft with their 20mm cannons on strafing runs. Each pass destroyed or disabled 1 to 2 boats. The psychological effect was immediate. The remaining IRGC craft in the northern group broke formation and began scattering. At 0713, 2 MH-60R Seahawk helicopters launched from Gravely's flight deck. They had been warming up since General Quarters was called. Armed with AGM-114 Hellfire missiles and M240 door guns, the Seahawks began methodically engaging IRGC craft in the southern group. 1 Hellfire struck a pay cap that was setting up for a missile launch at 11 nautical miles. The boat was obliterated. Its 2 unfired Nasr 1 missiles detonated sympathetically in the wreckage. By 0718, the engagement was effectively over. Of the 47 IRGC craft that had launched the attack, the after-action count was devastating. 17 destroyed. 11 confirmed damaged and retreating or disabled. 8 turned back before reaching engagement range. 11 unaccounted for, either escaped, sunk without confirmation, or lost in the clutter of the fishing fleet. 0 IRGC craft successfully struck USS Gravely, but the cost was not zero. Gravely had expended 62 5-inch rounds, over 4,000 rounds of 25mm ammunition, approximately 800 rounds of Phalanx 20mm, 4 Nulka decoys, and significant quantities of .50 caliber, and small arms ammunition. Her weapons magazines were at 53% capacity. One more engagement of that intensity, and she would be effectively combat ineffective from ammunition depletion alone. 7 sailors were wounded, 2 from the near-miss missile fragments, 3 from shrapnel when an RPG round struck the port bridge wing, and 2 from injuries sustained during the sprint to battle stations. All survived. None required evacuation. The tanker convoy was unharmed. All 4 commercial vessels cleared the engagement zone and continued their transit, escorted by USS Leyte Gulf, which arrived at 0741. And then there was the unresolved question. The contact destroyed at 0704, bearing 355, the one broadcasting a fishing vessel AIS signal. The Iranian government filed a formal protest with the United Nations within 9 hours. They claimed that USS Gravely had fired on and sunk the fishing vessel Shahid Bahonar, a 32-foot wooden dhow operating out of Bandar-e-Lenge, killing all 4 crew members. The U.S. Navy stated that the vessel was operating in an active combat zone, was not broadcasting on emergency frequencies, and was moving at a speed consistent with IRGC attack craft. The investigation remains ongoing. 4 fishermen, or 4 IRGC operatives on a disguised vessel. The answer matters enormously to the families, to international law, to the rules of engagement that will govern every future engagement in the Strait. If it was a fishing boat, Commander Holt made a mistake that killed 4 civilians. If it was an IRGC vessel spoofing AIS, she made the right call under impossible conditions. According to sources familiar with the investigation, the AIS data from Shahid Bahonar showed the vessel had been operating in the same area for 3 hours before the engagement, consistent with a fishing pattern. But the vessel's course change at 0656, 8 minutes before it was destroyed, placed it on a direct intercept heading with Gravely. That course change could have been an attack run, or it could have been a fisherman fleeing the sound of gunfire in the wrong direction. The ambiguity is the point. This is what swarm warfare is designed to exploit, not just the physical limits of a ship's weapons, but the moral limits of the rules of engagement. Force the defender to make life or death decisions in seconds, in an environment where the distinction between combatant and civilian is deliberately blurred. Iran lost 17 boats and their crews, perhaps more. The IRGC Navy's fast attack capability in the Eastern Strait was significantly degraded. The swarm doctrine, tested for the first time against a fully capable U.S. warship, had failed to achieve its primary objective, but it had succeeded in something else. It had proven that a sufficiently large swarm can force a modern warship to the very edge of its defensive capacity. Gravely survived because her crew was superbly trained. Her weapons systems functioned flawlessly, and air support arrived 7 minutes ahead of schedule. Change any one of those variables, and the outcome changes. Comment "launch" if you think Commander Holt made the right call on every engagement. Because the review board at 5th Fleet is asking the same question. The consequences spread outward from January 19th, like ripples from an explosion. Within 72 hours, the Navy ordered a minimum of 2 warships for every convoy escort through the Strait. Single-ship escort was permanently suspended. This doubled the ship requirements for Strait operations at a time when the fleet was already stretched thin across 3 theaters. The ammunition expenditure data from Gravely triggered an emergency logistics review. A single 30-minute engagement had consumed nearly half the ship's weapons load. If the IRGC launched a second swarm attack against a ship already depleted from the first, the mathematics of defense would fail. 5th Fleet ordered emergency ammunition resupply operations and repositioned the combat logistics ship USNS Medgar Evers to maintain a permanent station within 6 hours of the Strait. The Pentagon quietly revised the intelligence assessment on IRGC fast boat capabilities. The discovery that Zulfiqar-type boats had been modified to carry anti-ship missiles meant the total missile-capable fleet was potentially 3 times larger than previous estimates. Congress demanded a classified briefing. The Senate Armed Services Committee convened a closed hearing on February 4th, where the commander of Naval Forces Central Command faced pointed questions about surveillance gaps, intelligence failures, and the adequacy of single-ship escort doctrine. The most significant consequence was doctrinal. For 2 decades, the Navy had war-gamed swarm scenarios and developed counter-swarm tactics based on certain assumptions about Iranian capabilities. The January 19th engagement invalidated several of those assumptions. The number of missile-carrying craft was higher. The coordination was tighter. The willingness to accept catastrophic losses was absolute. Gravely's crew had trained in simulators for this scenario. They performed extraordinarily. Every system functioned. Every officer made defensible decisions under impossible pressure. And they came within 400 meters of taking a missile hit that could have killed dozens. 400 meters. The distance between a successful defense and a catastrophe. The Strait of Hormuz remains open. Commercial traffic continues to flow. Oil markets absorbed the shock within days. But somewhere in the ports of Bandar Abbas and Jask and Abu Musa, the IRGC Navy is studying the same after-action data the Pentagon is studying. They are counting their losses. They are redesigning their tactics. They are modifying